I think Fran Brown had the most successful season for a Syracuse football head coach in their first year.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And folks, on today's show, we are going over the regular season takeaways for Syracuse football after ending the year on an incredibly high note, defeating Miami yesterday afternoon, 42-38 inside the Dome. The Orange finished the regular season 9-3. Yes, they do have a bowl game that's going to be announced later on. And when it's announced, I will tell you here on Locked On Syracuse. But for all intents and purposes, this was the final game where we will see this roster all intact together. The transfer portal's a real thing. Signing day is around the corner. The offseason is fast approaching. It's here for many teams, unless you're playing in the conference championship games or going to be in the college football playoff. So for this episode, it's the regular season takeaways. We're going to discuss later on how Syracuse can capitalize on their momentum moving forward. We're going to talk about the QB revelation that occurred in Syracuse this season. Spoiler alert, Kyle McCord was not the problem at Ohio State. In fact, I would go as far as to say he was the solution at Ohio State, and they gave up on him too early. But first, we're going to talk about Fran Brown. Fran Brown is the guy, and he just had the most successful first-year head coach season in Syracuse football history. Before we get to everything, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So, it might come across as a hot take. Fran Brown, most successful first-year head coach in Syracuse football history. When I make a take that I think many will consider to be a hot take, I want to make sure that I have as many facts and statistics that can back it up. Okay? Because I don't want to just blurt out a hot take and not sound informed. So I'm going to tell you why I genuinely believe this. It's not to say that he's going to end up being the best Syracuse head coach ever. He's got a long way to go for that. Ben Schwartzwalder would like a word on that. But in terms of first-year head coach, he had the most successful season, in my opinion, in Syracuse football history. First of all, he finished the year 9-3. 9-3 is a really strong record for 95% of college football teams out there. 9-3, I would consider really good. He got 3 ranked victories this season. Georgia Tech week 2, at UNLV, and of course, the game yesterday against the Miami Hurricanes. He inherited, let's face it, a roster that needed an infusion of talent. And we're going to talk about the recruiting that he did before the season and the recruiting that he's doing right now for Syracuse football. But he did not inherit the greatest situation in the world, but he certainly made it look a lot more appealing now than it was at this time a year ago. The record alone is the most success a Syracuse football first-year coach has ever had since 1991. That was Paul Pasqualoni. Syracuse went 10-2 that season, 9-2 in the regular season. But here's the difference between him and Coach Paul Pasqualoni. Here's the difference between him and Fran Brown, okay? In 1990, Syracuse went 7-4-2. And Paul Pasqualoni inherited a team that went 7-4-2. And not long before, had gone 11-0-1 in 1987. So Syracuse football was a better destination at that point. It's not to diminish Coach Paul Pasqualoni. That's not what I'm trying to do here. But when we're trying to compare the best first-year head coaches in the history of Syracuse football, We got to take everything into account. We got to take into account the situation. Did Coach Fran Brown inherit a bowl team for the previous 2 seasons? Yes. But, let's be honest. Syracuse football was not very good last season. The year before, they started 6-0, and they collapsed, and they went 7-5. But Fran Brown in 1 year, Syracuse football looks a whole lot different than it did, right? Just a year ago. That's a credit a lot to Fran Brown. For what it's worth, other legendary Syracuse football head coaches, right? Dick MacPherson in his first season, 4-6-1. Ben Schwartzwalder, in my opinion, the greatest head coach in the history of Syracuse football. He was the head coach of the team that won the national championship in 1959. He went 4-5 in his first season. Fran Brown said post-game that ultimately his goal is to go undefeated and win the national championship. But even he acknowledged, albeit it was a little bit, kind of just had to do it. I'm like struggling to find the word right now. I'm having a brain fart about what word to use. Reluctant, that's the word. He was kind of reluctant to admit it. But he even said publicly that this was progress. Going 9-3 is a big step in your first season as a Syracuse football head coach. It's the best first-year head coach season in the history of Syracuse football. Let's talk about his recruiting prowess now, I should say. Sorry, my voice is still a little bit shot from yesterday. My goodness, that was an incredible game. 42-38 over Miami. Fran Brown last season took over Syracuse football. He was the defensive backs coach over at Georgia. And by 24/7 Sports, he was named the #1 recruiter in the nation. He comes to Syracuse, and using the 24/7 Sports rankings, he delivers the 36th ranked recruiting class in 2024. He got a lot of flips on signing day. He maintained a guy like Jamie Tremble, a 4-star recruit who committed under Dino Babers. That was a big time stay right there for for Fran Brown, I should say. 36th ranked recruiting class heading into this season. What's the context? It was the best recruiting class that Syracuse had had since 2001. By the way, the 2025 class is ranked 35th. And I imagine after the Miami game, hopefully they can capitalize on the momentum that the recruiting is only going to go up. This was just 1 year under Fran Brown. Think about it for a second. You just beat Miami. There were a lot of visitors in attendance for that game. It's a pretty good showing, don't you think? He also kept elite talent from entering the transfer portal. LaQuinn Allen, Aronde Gadsden. Remember the Aronde Gadsden story? He told Coach Fran Brown, if you get me a quarterback, I'll stay. If you don't, I'm going to leave and enter the portal. He got him a quarterback. Oh, he did. Shout out Fran Brown for getting Kyle McCord. We'll talk about him in the next segment. He also kept a guy like Marlo Wax, who had spent his whole career with Syracuse. He only knew a guy like Dino Babers. And you could say what you want about Dino Babers, but they had a relationship. He could have entered the portal prior to last season. He never did. He stayed with Syracuse for a long time. New head coach. I don't care who it is. You have to be thinking. He kept Justin Barron. Barron was about to enter the portal, but Fran Brown kept him. So from a recruiting standpoint, he nailed it. But now what about the coaching? Nobody, I think, really talks about Fran Brown's coaching because he's such a great recruiter. But if you actually think about it, he was a great head coach. From a coaching standpoint, did he ever mismanage the clock? I asked this on yesterday's postgame. Did he ever mismanage the clock this season? I don't think so. It literally started week 1 with the excellent clock management. Against Ohio in the first week of the season, he gave his offense a chance to score by preserving time on the clock at the end of the first half. Lo and behold, Syracuse does score a touchdown on the drive, and they win the game because of it, basically. UNLV, he might as well have had to buy Barry Odom, the coach of UNLV, a watch after that one because he coached circles around Barry Odom with the clock. He did the same thing against Virginia Tech, too, in that comeback victory. He also deserves credit for the coaching staff that's around him. He hired Jeff Nixon. Jeff Nixon was not inherited. I believe Jeff Nixon came from the New York Giants the season prior to this one. as like a running backs coach. He's the offensive coordinator, and you got to give credit to both of them for building an offensive scheme that maximized player abilities. You have to give them credit for it. Because what's the job of a coach? You take the talent that you do have. First of all, you got to get elite talent, right? It's college football. You got to get the best. But of what you have, can you squeeze every ounce of ability that you have from your players? And I felt like, at least on offense, they certainly did that. They got everything they could out of basically every single player on Syracuse's offense. Now, defensive coordinator Elijah Robinson, he didn't have the greatest season in the world. I mean, one of the big mistakes that him and Fran Brown made was in the loss to Stanford, leaving Alec Iomanner one-on-one on the outside, only rushing 3 on the biggest play of the game, 4th down. But you know what? Let's give credit to both of them for what they did yesterday against Miami. Miami had 178 total yards of offense in the first quarter. That's a pace of about 750 in the game. That's a lot of yards. And I know Miami is a great offense, but I mean, come on now. For the rest of the game, Miami only gained 325 total yards of offense. It's a little over 100 a quarter. That's pretty good for playing a team like Miami that averaged going into the game 540 total yards of offense. The staff adjusted. They blitzed Cam Ward a lot. They got a big play on defense from Devin Grant. He was in position to make the play. You got to give the staff credit for how they did against Miami. So overall, Fran Brown is the guy for Syracuse football. I think they nailed this hire. How could you not believe that? Leave a comment in the comment section below your thoughts now on the hire of Fran Brown, because my thought is this. I always believed in his potential, and I knew that he can recruit. My question was going into the year, can he coach? And he proved that to me. He proved that he can coach. He proved that he can build a good staff around him. He proved that he's a good in-game manager. He knows situations well, and he squeezed every ounce of ability that he could, especially on offense, from his players. And to me, he is the most successful first-year head coach in the history of Syracuse football. No disrespect to the other legends. We are just talking about first-year head coach success. He is the best, in my opinion. So that's Fran Brown. And guys, if they keep having success, and I think they will, we're going to talk about moving forward, Syracuse is going to have to pony up some money, let me tell you, because other schools are going to come calling for him. They will. It's only a matter of time if he keeps doing this. But hopefully they keep having success and the Syracuse football program can keep him around. So that's Fran Brown. He is the guy for Syracuse football. Now coming up, there was a quarterback revelation for the Orange this season. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And folks, Syracuse football's preseason over-under win total, it does not count for a bowl game, it was 7.5 over on FanDuel, and the Orange finished 9-3. So if you bet the over, congratulations. Now, I understand that the bet hit last week against UConn, but I did want to acknowledge it now that, hey, they went 9-3. They were a 1.5 over. If you got them on an alternate spread at 8.5, even better to you, more power to you. If you want to get in on FanDuel, all you got to do is visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, and never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I'm Jackson Holzer. This is Locked On Syracuse. If you like what you're hearing, hit that like and subscribe button. Helps the channel grow. It reaches every Syracuse fan, football, basketball, or whatever. This is Locked On Syracuse, and I'm Jackson Holzer. And on today's show, We are going over the regular season takeaways. The Orange finished the year on a high note at 9-3. We talked about earlier how Fran Brown is the most successful first-year head coach in the history of the program. Yes, I backed it up with statistics. If you're just catching this now, you can go back and listen to my reasoning. Now let's talk about the quarterback revelation that happened on the Hill this season. And trust me, there will be plenty of future podcasts on Locked On Syracuse going over the quarterback situation for Syracuse, because Kyle McCord, whether he plays the bowl game or not, he's out of eligibility. So he cannot return to Syracuse next season. Thank you so much, Ryan Day, for burning his red shirt. So in the second half of a meaningless game, thank you so much. As much as we want to send a bottle of champagne to him, he did burn a year of his eligibility for no reason. That's neither here nor there, though. I mean, he would have an extra year, but whatever. But let's talk about the quarterback revelation that is Kyle McCord. If you are a quarterback, this is something that I referenced in the post game yesterday. If you're a quarterback, transfer portal, high school recruit, ask yourself this question. Why wouldn't you want to come to Syracuse? We're going to start with Kyle McCord for a second here because it's very important to the story. And look at what Syracuse did with him. Just think about it for a second. I believed in Kyle McCord heading into the year. In fact, my preseason prediction was that Kyle McCord would finish second team All-ACC. I didn't see this coming. I didn't see a record year coming at all. Kyle McCord holds the single season Syracuse record for yards with 4,326. By the way, he's the first 4,000-yard passer in Syracuse football history. The all-time record for touchdowns in a single season at 29 and completions with 367. If I were to have told you before the year that Kyle McCord would do 80% of that, you would have signed on the dotted line. Wouldn't you? 80% of that production, I think we all would have taken it, and it would have certainly been a fine year. He gave us everything we could have hoped for and more this season. And we'll see how the NFL evaluates him. They can be kind of finicky with how they evaluate anybody, but especially quarterbacks. They're not always right. A lot of times they are. We'll see how it is. But I think it's fair to say he went from going into the year, maybe he gets drafted. He'll probably get a shot at training camp, right? Maybe he'll get a combine invite because he's from Ohio State, and to now where there's no doubt in my mind he's getting drafted. It's just a matter of where he gets drafted. That's the question. I don't know how the NFL is going to evaluate him, but if they don't draft him, I think that's a foolish mistake. And whoever gets him as an undrafted free agent is in for a treat. McCord was good at Ohio State, contrary to popular belief heading into the season, but he was even better at Syracuse. And he was developed properly. I talked about in the first segment here of how the staff, they built a system designed perfectly for their personnel on offense. They looked at Kyle McCord and they said, how can we elevate him? Okay, well, maybe we don't have the best offensive line in the world, so we're probably going to need to utilize a short passing game. Okay, Kyle McCord's an accurate guy. He can do that. How do we maximize a guy like Trevor Pena? How do we maximize a guy like Jackson Meeks? What about Oronde Gadsden? They maximized all that talent. This coaching staff deserves a ton of credit, not just Kyle McCord. So on top of the advantages, though, of just being developed coming to Syracuse, you're playing in a dome. That's a huge advantage. There's no weather in a dome. None. It's a little bit different playing at Syracuse than Ohio State. At Syracuse, there's no weather. There's no elements. You're playing 8 games a year in a dome. You're going to look pretty good. At Ohio State, by the time you get to November, it's cold. It's cold outside. It can be windy. You don't look as good all of a sudden. So, hey, Syracuse has an advantage, the fact that they play in a dome. You also know, and I just hit on this, you also know that you're going to play for a staff that's going to elevate you. They're going to take what you do well and say, let's just do more of that. What do you do well? When we talk about transfer portal options for Syracuse football, because I believe inevitably they're going to go in the portal for a quarterback, regardless of whether it's for a starter or if it's for a backup, they're going to do something in the portal. I'm not necessarily worried about them because I believe that this staff will build a scheme designed around what the quarterback can do. And if you come to Syracuse, you're going to be developed nicely, and you can count on the weapons around you being developed nicely. Look at Trevor Pena and Jackson Meeks. Go look at their career numbers heading into this season, and then go look at their numbers this season. And these are not guys who are, freshmen last year who, because they got a little bit older, a little bit more experience, now all of a sudden they're great college football players. Nope, they've been around college football for a while. But they broke out this season. Good quarterback play certainly helps. They had a quarterback who can get them the ball, but also they had a staff that's going to develop everyone nicely. So if you're a quarterback and you're maybe watching this podcast or listening to this podcast, why not Syracuse? I don't see a reason why you wouldn't want to come here. You want to go to the NFL? Well, Kyle McCord's going to go to the NFL. He is. And that was not a guarantee when he was at Ohio State that he was going to be in the NFL. He was at Ohio State, and it wasn't a guarantee. Quarterback revelation. I think Syracuse might have become a popular destination for quarterbacks now. Leave your thoughts in the comments section below, but I think this is a great spot to be if you are a quarterback. You're playing in a dome. You're going to be developed nicely. The weapons around you are going to be developed nicely. Why not Syracuse? So this season, we learned Fran Brown, he's the man. He proved it with the results. We also learned that Syracuse football, maybe they're a quarterback hub going forward with what they did with Kyle McCord this year. Coming up, how does the program move forward? Folks, I know we're talking a lot of football here on the podcast, and trust me, there's going to be a lot of football on this podcast, right? There's a lot of momentum with Syracuse football, but basketball season is also in full swing, whether it's NBA, college, Syracuse. They're always exciting, especially Syracuse, because think about it, whether they're playing Youngstown State or Texas, it's going to be a close game. It's just weird, right? They play up to competition, they play down to competition. But regardless, the way I get tickets for these exciting basketball games is by using Game Time. And Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And my favorite feature is the curated deals. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever you want. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. I don't think it's a hot take to say that Syracuse football must capitalize on their momentum they have right now. They're 9-3. They seem like an up-and-coming program. Their recruiting classes are only getting better under Fran Brown. Fran Brown just completed the best first-year head coach season in Syracuse football history, in my opinion. It's time to capitalize, and it's time to build sustained success, which is something that has not happened to this program in the 21st century. It's just a reality. Think about it for a moment, right? 2018, they had a ton of success. They also went 9-3 in the regular season. They won the 10th game in the bowl game. What did they do the following year? They went 4-8. I'm not saying this to be pessimistic. That's not what I'm doing. What I'm saying is they got to build on this, and they got to build sustained success. For what it's worth, Syracuse football this season qualified for their third consecutive bowl game. I think that matters, even though the first two came under Dino Babers. But I think that's definitely a step in the right direction. 3 straight bowl appearances. That's solid to me. But luckily this time around, unlike 2018 and 2019, there's a coach that I really believe in. I believe in Fran Brown. And I believe he knows what's in front of him. Because, folks, the thing that we don't want to talk about, but look, next season is a year from now, but we got to talk about it, and there's going to be plenty of time to. The schedule's a lot tougher on paper. And this season's schedule actually ended up pretty tough. The fact that they went 9-3 is pretty impressive. But next season, at Miami, at Clemson, at SMU, at Notre Dame, Tennessee neutral site, at Georgia Tech, they're going to have to build an even better team. But I think they will. The early signing day is coming up, December 4th, which is this Wednesday, to December 6th. Syracuse football, they have to retain their big fish that they currently have. But hopefully they can also land some big fish in recruiting. I mean, if they can get a guy like Javion Hilson, that 5-star, I know Texas is going after him, Texas A&M. He visited Missouri and Michigan. A lot of top programs are going after him. If Syracuse can land a guy like him, that would be massive. Keeping Demetrius Samuel, who I believe actually was in town to visit for Syracuse. I think it helps the fact that they won this week and they showed how great of an environment was. For those that don't know, Demetrius Samuel was the highest rated recruit on Syracuse football's 2025 class. Consensus 4-star guy, top 300 in the country, no doubt about it. They got to keep him, but they also got to get some big fish. And they also got to use the success they had this season as a sales pitch. What do I mean by that? Prior to this year, Fran Brown's sales pitch was a lot on hope, right? A lot on you have to have faith. You have to have belief. We're going to be a good program, guys. Come to Syracuse. We're going to be a good program. I promise you. I promise you. That's all cool and all. You can make all these promises in the world to these recruits. Results. Guess what they got this year? Results. 9-3. First year. How about that? You don't have to sell to these recruits anymore belief and hope. You can sell them on actual results. You come to Syracuse. Guess what? We're going to be a good football team. And guess what? You know what? We're going to be a good football team with or without you. You might as well come to Syracuse, right? Use the success as a recruiting tool because you have it now. Capitalize on the momentum. The portal. Can they repeat the success they had in the portal last season? They got guys like Kyle McCord and Fadil Diggs and Jackson Meeks and others. Can Fran Brown retain the top talent that he has on the roster from entering the portal? We're going to get to the NFL in a moment, but from at least entering the portal, can he keep a guy like LaQuinn Allen or a Trevor Pena? Can he do it? Hopefully he can. He's got to. Also, let's talk about the NFL now. Don't discourage guys from going to the league. It might hurt the team in the short term, but in the long term, when you can send guys to the NFL, that's another recruiting sales pitch. Transfer portal and high school. Hey guys, you come to Syracuse. Not only are we going to be a good football team, but we're going to develop you into a potential NFL player, which is ultimately the goal of many of these recruits. Many, if not all, their dream is to make the NFL. Whether it's realistic for them or not. For most of them, it's not realistic at all. But you got to sell it to them. You can make the NFL. How many NFL guys are on the roster right now for Syracuse? Certainly more than last year, when last year they had 0. McCord, I think Diggs. LaQuinn Allen at some point is going to be a pro. Aronde Gadsden. I might be missing some, but at least those 4. I think Jackson Meeks has certainly earned a training camp invite. Send guys to the NFL. So overall, this season was a massive success. And now it's time to take the next step. Build a sustained winner. Pitch them on the fact that, hey, we're going to be a good team. With or without you, we're going to be a good team. And you're going to have a chance to go to the NFL. And we're going to develop you nicely. And you're going to be a good human as well. You're going to also make some NIL money because that matters too. Why wouldn't you want to come to Syracuse, right? So that's what the Orange got to do moving forward. My overall long-term outlook, I'm very optimistic. I'm more optimistic in this Syracuse football program than I have been in my entire life. I'm not that old, but I imagine most of you guys who are watching or listening probably haven't felt this way since before I was born. I was born in 2002. I'm pretty young. I've been covering Syracuse football, though, for going on now my 5th year. But over the course of my lifetime, I don't think we've ever had this type of optimism in this football program. Maybe I'm wrong. You can leave a comment in the comment section below, but it feels different. And that's why yesterday I said it was a program-changing win. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. As far as what is coming up on the podcast going forward, there's a ton of upcoming episodes. I can't tell you exactly what day they're going to be released, but here are some ideas, and these are going to be future podcasts. Syracuse football off-season needs. National Signing Day preview thoughts. Syracuse basketball, this is definite. Syracuse basketball versus Tennessee, post-game reaction. That'll be on Tuesday night. Plus, plenty of coverage on Syracuse football's quarterback situation. How they should attack the portal. Do they go with an in-house option? If they go in the portal, what are the options? What should Syracuse be looking for? Plenty of that coming up here on the Locked On Syracuse podcast. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. And for your second listen, you can check out the Locked On ACC podcast, Locked On Canes podcast with Alex Dono. Locked On ACC is also hosted by Kenton Gibbs as well. They keep it real. They bring you the truth about where your favorite ACC team stands within the conference. You can find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this video, click that like button. If you really liked it, subscribe to the channel. Turn on those notifications so you know right away when I am dropping the next podcast. And everyone, take care.